Well, so just finding your seat and your posture and, this sense of receptivity and maybe tonight a little bit of added flexibility. I'm assuming that we've got a broad range of practice in the room, some people that are newer to meditation and some people that have been doing it for quite some time and have an established practice. So I'm going to start us with the breath, and that can be, where you stay for the rest of the meditation, or you may just wish to stay with your practice, with your established practice. But then I'll move on to sensations and exploring just our direct experience of our embodiedness. And then I'm going to move into exploring another physical element, but a very subtle one, and that's the element of space. And so, if at any time the words feel like they're not serving, just let them go and settle into what helps your attention stay connected to the present moment in a sort of open, accepting way. As we settle in, we're just patient with this process of arriving and turning the attention inwards. Oftentimes, the most noticeable process that the attention can connect with is the process of the breath and breathing. And in kind of, there's no particular kind of breath, it's just this almost listening quality to the breath itself with the freshness of, just a simple, basic, childlike curiosity, almost as if these are some of the first breaths you've ever taken. And noticing where the attention is drawn in the breath, or there's a location like the chest or the belly, the nose, the throat. If it feels like there's, a location of the breath that the attention's drawn to, it's fine to let the attention just kind of connect in with that, refine itself, deepen the connection. The attention may be drawn to the whole breath, or feeling the body being breathed. Whether it's a short breath or long breath or shallow or deep. Let's just take a moment to connect with the breath and see if that invitation for the attention to just settle there gently without forcing. Settle with your breath for a moment. And if the attention wanders, just gently, kind of kindly, without judging it, just bring it, return back to the breath. Maybe there's a sense of the attention connecting with the breath, and you can stay there for a whole in breath or an in and an out breath. That's wonderful. And if the mind moves around, that's okay too. The attention wanders. That's just the nature of the puppy we're trying to train to stay on the paper. So we have this allowing attitude that is willing just to start back again. And we wake up and recognize we've been lost. And so feel free to stay with the breath and just let my words pass through. Or if you'd like, join me on an exploration of some other elements of your experience if the attention feels stable enough to do that. And really, sometimes I think us adults can feel like we feel like we should be experts at something, and we don't have that childlike, less self conscious attitude, and striving can come in. And just as we open up the field of attention, being very kind and patient with ourselves. And coming back to the breath, if it feels like that serves us, if that's a place that helps our attention collect into this moment here, now. But when your eyes are closed, how do you know you have a body? We kind of feel our physicality, our embodiedness directly via a set of four areas of sensations. And the first one is this simple experience of weight. We call that the earth element. Sort of experience that as heaviness or lightness, softness or hardness. One of the more noticeable places of that is sometimes where our sit bones, our hips are meeting the cushion or the chair. It's feeling into the directness and the simplicity, heavy, light, hard, soft. You might feel that where your hands are resting and making contact with whatever they're resting on or touching, or your feet. other areas of your body that may feel heavy or light. Sometimes an emotion can have a sense of heaviness to it, like if I'm sad, maybe I feel a sense of heaviness in my chest area. If I'm happy, maybe I feel a sense of lightness. Where do you feel this element of weight, this earth element in your body? How do you feel it? Another element that we feel in our bodies is the element of movement, or classically it's called the air element. The instructions started with feeling the breath, the movement of air, rising, falling, expanding, contracting, flowing. These are all aspects of movement that we feel in our breaths. We might also feel a sense of pulsing or tingling, vibrating. Sometimes the attention can register a sense of tingling with where the fingers are making contact with anything they're touching. Or maybe we've felt butterflies in our stomach. When I'm sad, the feeling of sadness has sort of a flowing quality to it. It's heavy, it's soft. That's the earth element. But I also notice that there's kind of a flowing down towards my belly. That's just my experience. Yours might be quite different. If I'm happy, there might be a sense of lightness and a sense of that lightness expanding outwards, almost radiating. Where do you feel the element of air or movement in your body? How do you feel it? We also feel temperature. We call that the element of fire, but it can actually extend from anywhere from quite cold to burning hot, and all the elements of coolness and warmth in between, or neutrality of temperature. Sometimes we can feel the movement of the breath, but it might feel a little warm or cool. Or where we're making contact with some part of our body might feel cool or warm. Or when I feel sadness, I feel a warmth to that heavy softness in my chest that's flowing downwards. When I feel happy, there's a soft, light warmth that's radiating, expanding. Can you notice any areas where you're feeling a sense of temperature? Another area in which we experience our physicality, our embodiment, is in the area of wetness or water. And we might feel that in our mouths or our eyes, especially when tears come out, or of course, when we go swimming, we really feel that wetness, or when we have a drink. And so these areas of weight, movement, and temperature and wetness, or earth, air, fire, and water, are constant, direct, unmediated aspects that tell us we have a body. It's how we sense our world, through our body. But we can also feel the element of space. All those other elements are moving if we pay attention, especially things like the breath or movement itself, moving and changing. But the openness of our bodies in which they happen, that's just the space, the openness. But we have a sense of the space our bodies take up, almost a sense of our permission to take up our space. When somebody gets too close to us, we might feel that they're invading our space. We feel space in and around us. And just as we can distinguish that an emotion or a process like the breath might have temperature, weight, movement, even wetness associated with it, and we can be distinct and clear about those aspects, we can also be clear about the sense of space. Maybe you can feel out into the space around your body. Can you feel the openness of space around your body? If you do, how far out does the attention go? And go out a couple of inches or feet, or maybe it stops at the memory of the walls of the room. Just allowing the attention to connect with the sense of space just as it appears to you. If there's a boundary or a limitation, acknowledging that, feeling that. Can you feel beyond that? Is there space outside of any limitation or boundary? And if you can feel out beyond that, does that help to soften or even dissolve that sense of boundary? Sometimes when we feel out into the space around us, there can be a sense that it has a sense of coolness or warmth, the fire element. Can we make a distinction and sense the distinction between the openness and the sense of temperature that might be in part of it or all of it? Maybe there's a subtle sense of vibration sometimes, or even light. And we can distinguish that these are things that are in the space, and that the space itself is just the experience of openness, almost qualitylessness. What does the lack of sensation feel like? So there's a stillness to it, a peace, a rest. Having felt that sense of space and distinguished it possibly, or explored distinguishing it, we can now turn the attention into what we take to be the inside of our bodies. We might notice more clearly elements of weight, temperature, movement. And we also notice the space element within our bodies, the openness within our bodies, in which there is a dance of these other sensations. And then there's just space, open, still. And then we can kind of take the final step in this guidance, which is to sort of feel both internally and externally the sense of space and sensations at the same time. And there might be a sense of the edges of our bodies, but that's really another sensation or a concept that's present in the space. Does the sense of internal and external begin to dissolve, to soften? If it does, and if it deepens, we get a sense and a hint that there's just this open, receptive, knowing space in which all the objects of our lives, our bodily sensations, our thoughts, emotions, images, and sounds, all coming and going in this open, restful space, ourselves and each other, our world, in this open, restful space. And just allowing ourselves to have this as staying connected, exploring, being fresh with this element of space. Whatever resonates, it can just be an invitation to something, a continuation, a continuum of exploration from the physical and relative to the unconditional and absolute knowing nature of our minds. And so we'll sit for a little while longer. And just the invitation is to feel this sense of space as you feel the sensations and anything else opening up within that space. And notice what's alive for you. And so we'll sit for just a few more minutes. No inside, no outside, just the simplicity of an open, knowing, sky-like spaciousness in which the bodily sensations, thoughts, images, emotions, sounds, the moments of our lives, ourselves, each other, our world, all are passing, arising, being known, changing, passing. No separation, just unity in its most simplistic form. Letting the words go, letting the breath deepen. And when it feels right, allowing your eyes to gently open. Oh, when I just acknowledge that that was a lot of words and probably pretty easy to get lost with all that, but if there's any service that it's had for you, then wonderful. Let's have some time. We'll reconvene at 6:40. Uh, take a moment for your biology if you need to. And we'll see you in a couple of minutes here. I guess the bell will be rung. All right, well, I'll just go ahead and begin and probably not going to say anything all that important anyway, so um but thank you all. This is an area of practice for me personally and an offering that has been very core and essential to my exploration for some time. And I'm still in this very um, tender space of exploring it and trying to offer it in a, kind of a thorough way. Um, but so that, just recognizing that's not the normal sit where you get to, you know, just be in the openness or whatever your practice is. And so I'll kind of put an apology out there for any intrusion into your samadhi, your concentration. And for those of you who are new, blessings and welcome aboard on this incredible path. So this month, our theme in teaching is opening to our hearts. And I wanted to explore tonight how feeling into this fifth element of space, the four elements of earth, air, fire, water are classically and kind of more standardly, more commonly practiced because they're more noticeable. But I've just found that there's been very fruitful in introducing people at whatever stage of their practice to this element of space because it's so native to us. And I wanted to explore how that reveals the knowing nature of our minds, and then how that informs our understanding and really the felt sense of our hearts, our goodness, our warmth of love. I think I like it, calling it the heart mind. So again, this was included, and I'm just going to give a review of what we did in the guided meditation. We started with the breath, which can be a great object to kind of help to stabilize the attention. If you're newer to practice, getting a whole breath in there is really fantastic. And just showing up and turning the attention inwards, being in this field is all you really need to do. So, don't sweat it. This is an unfolding path. And then sometimes there's that moment of like, I was here for a breath, and that having the mind, the attention, and the body, and also that sense of, I don't know, just a little bit of warmth, all in the same space. There can just be, I don't know, a sense of alignment around that has a good feeling. So if you get a hit of that, or like you're catching the hymn of something helpful. Good-o. So we started with the breath to help stabilize the attention. And then we moved out into those other elements of sensation. And then we moved out into the most subtle element, which we kind of commonly overlook, that element of space. So now I kind of did in the meditation, but I want to more formally relate that to the nature of mind. And just to say, that space is something it's obviously native to us, it's indigenous to our relative conditional everyday lives, but it's also limitless and ever present. And so, in a way, it's a bridge to experience directly an unconditional nature that, the mind, this knowing, this ability to receive and know our experience is often referred to as the mind or awareness. Um, and that's often referred to as kind of like uh, a sky-like nature, and the experience of our lives passes through it like clouds. Um, so, you know, and yet we're so focused on the object, on the clouds, that we rarely notice the space, the sky-like nature in which they're occurring. They're really, and this is another talk, quite a lot of other talks, they're arising, the clouds arise out of the sky, from the sky, due to causes and conditions. They're made of the sky. Um, we walk into a room and we notice all the objects in the room. Typically, we're drawn to that, but we don't notice the space of the room. We don't notice also the space of our lives. The elements of embodiedness are moving and distinct. They have a charge. They're more obvious. The space itself, when we explore, maybe we discover that it doesn't move. It's still, it's at rest. And so that's something in our direct experience that we can connect with that's at peace. Even when things are crazy, wild, exploding around us, can there be some aspect of our attention that's connected with that sense of peace, with that sense of spaciousness? And so, because of my practice, uh, having an emphasis and a focus, I've had a natural curiosity to this element. And so I've been drawn to it. And when I had something that was very, um, traumatic and shocking. I fell off a ladder from about 10 feet up and I shattered my right leg. And as I was lying there on the ground, a lot of thoughts came up and there was some panic and all of that. But just because this is something that I've been exploring, my mind also went out and felt the sense of space around me in the midst of the pain of my leg, uh, of these crazy thoughts like I'll never walk again, it's going to have to be amputated, and all that. There was kind of, with the practice, this connecting out to something that's already at rest. And that was very, very stabilizing. So as I was lying there at the foot of the ladder, fortunately I had a helper with me. He was some distance away and hadn't seen this, so I laid there and just paused and felt the space and allowed everything to kind of flow through, and just was kind of open to, well, what's the appropriate action, what's appropriate in this moment. And so the appropriate thing was to say, can you please get my phone? And then the next appropriate thing was to call 911 and call for an ambulance. And then the next appropriate thing was to call my insurance broker, my health insurance broker, so I wouldn't get bankrupt from all this. And and throughout that whole thing, there was this connection to something that was open and not contracted in, not overwhelmed by. My attention hadn't collapsed. It was a survival moment, and there was a deep knowing. It's like I can't afford to be hooked by and caught by, will I ever walk again? It was like that's out there. I've got to be here. And to help me stay here was this connection to the openness that's also present and a part of here. That's very important to know. And for me, it occurs that, when we're just focused on the bodily sensations, sight, smells, thoughts, emotions, inside, outside, that's actually not a truly complete mindfulness. We're not aware of, it's not comprehensive. We're not aware of the context, uh, the container. in which all of that's happening. So that's why I find space, that was one moment uh, that space really mattered for me. And I have to say, I walk around a good bit of my day savoring. It's not a way of bypassing or jumping off or hiding from what's happening. It's an addition to, and the space is in direct contact with what's happening. It's a part of what's happening. So, this model of the sky and space, or the sky-like nature of mind, um, is very liberating because the sky, the clouds that pass through the sky's just there. When we explore, when we can differentiate and distinguish this element of space, we're like, oh. What happens is that our attention gets grabbed by things and sort of collapses into them. And we tell a story about it, we identify with it, we cling to it. There's this collapsing into what's happening, and we get lost. We get lost in thought, we get lost in uh, what's occurring. We're sort of blindly reacting a lot of times when that happens. And we're literally lost until causes and conditions are such that we wake up and go, oh, wait a second. I can take sort of an observational or sky-like orientation to this experience. I can register. So this has been very helpful for me to go, especially on retreats sometimes when things get very intense, a lot of intense memories or just energies out of nowhere can come up. We're not expecting it, even feelings of trauma or panic. And by having the attention stay connected to that sense of spaciousness, it doesn't collapse into that identification. And I realized that I had been on retreat a lot where I was present to my experience, but I wasn't mindful because I was collapsed into it. And thank you. There was a wonderful teacher named James Baraz who helped me see that. And that was so liberating because I started making that differentiating and going, even though this feels really painful or um, rugged, uh, severe, that quality of knowing it, that spaciousness in knowing it, is not itself harmed by that. It's not stained or imbalanced by that. And this is kind of the liberating quality of the nature, the knowing nature of mind, as we equate it with space or sky. The only issue with that, there is an issue, there's a gotcha. So a disclaimer is that can leave things a little bit cold or distant, um, uh, and kind of a sense of being clinical. The scientist looking down through the microscope at, okay, what are you? Oh, that's warmth. Oh, that's heaviness. Oh, that's a thought. Um, Good luck with those thoughts. They tend to catch us and drag us along and proliferate, and they're troublesome critters. Where do they come from? Where do they go? Goodness gracious. And what's their substance even? And they take up so much of our lives. Um, but actually, as we, continue to allow ourselves this sort of childlike, innocent, um, unself-conscious exploration of space and allow ourselves to be informed by, allow the kind of qualityless qualities to emerge for our curiosity, we see that, oh, wait, everything arises in space. Everything is saturated by space. It is part of everything we will ever experience. Well, not ever experience. There are states in which space, a relative sense of space as in volume is not so applicable, but that's yet another Dharma talk. Um, but for all intensive purposes, for a lot of our lives, that space is in direct contact. It's not in direct contact, it's permeating and pervading our experience. Um, so there's this intimacy of the space, and it's so inclusive. It doesn't amplify or deny, doesn't push away. It doesn't, try to draw things in, get more of what it likes or push away what it doesn't like. It's just there. It's just this registry. It's this allowing, accepting, intimate, non-judging, and these are all unconditional qualities of space itself. It's limitless, it's inclusive, it dissolves as we, looked at in our guided meditation, this sense, the original wound in a way of separating out. There's a me out here, or in here, and there's all that out there, and protection is needed from it. This is the core delusion that pretty much all spiritual practices ultimately are helping to soften and dissolve ultimately. So, this inclusivity, acceptance, intimacy, don't these words sound familiar? These are some familiar kind of heart aspects. Um, these are some things that we recognize like, oh, wait a second, wow, I associate a lot of those words with the heart, with the idea and the experience of love. And if I'm ever asked to define what love is, I I always think of it as love is exclusion. And the opposite of love is actually fear, which is a sense of exclusion is needed, this sense of separating out. There's separation, there's unity, there's inclusivity, there's exclusivity. When we are inclusive and unified, that love is just that experience. We are in unconditional connection. Um, So I want to look at this, and it's kind of, one of the things that we do in our practice is, and some of you may be familiar with this, is we have a practice that's called the Brahma Viharas. And this is where we explore the qualities of the heart that are kind of in attendance with these qualities of that open, knowing spaciousness. And in a sense, arise from it and with it. I'm making word distinctions here, but it's really a fullness that, I could hold up a ball and say, maybe it's a blue ball, and I could say that it's a sphere. It's made of rubber, so it has a certain tactile experience, and it's blue. It's just ball, it's one thing, but there's different qualities or aspects that I can highlight about its presence. And so that's what I'm doing here. So this is a little bit of the gymnastics of language. So we've got this open sky-like, we've connected our attention with space. We've differentiated the elements of sensation. We've differentiated sounds, emotions, thoughts from this, and we see them as clouds moving through. We've gone, oh, wow. So connecting with the element of space physically takes us to that sky-like nature, and then we begin to see these heart-like qualities that are inherent there. And the Brahma Viharas are ways in which we illuminate and connect with and feel those qualities more distinctly. So when we're very, very, very relaxed, and we might get so relaxed that we even, the sense of a body is very, very light, the sense of, it's almost like sounds and everything, they just kind of die down. There's contentment, there's ease. It's like peace is the most present thing. But then some aspect of experience, arises. And when it arises in that peaceful, open space, there's a balance, there's an imperturbability that's there. It's not separate from, it's not cold or distant from, but there's just a balance. And we call this equanimity, which is a quality of direct, intimate contact, and yet also um, uh, not being pushed over. This ability to abide and maintain that contact. It's a very stabilizing. It's almost like a big life ring around you when you're in the sea, with the waves coming, but that life ring helps you maintain your balance in the midst of choppy seas. Um, and so when we have that intimate contact and, a cloud comes along, there's an inherent receptivity and allowing inclusion. And that's the beginning of sort of a friendliness or a kindness. We call it even loving kindness. And we often end with, we will end tonight with a metta. A metta is where we bring forth that high heart quality. um, we connect our attention. It's like we're not creating something, we're connecting with something that's already there. We're illuminating it, we're inviting our capacity to register it. So then there's this, the balance, there's a friendliness or inclusivity toward lovingness towards the experience. But if that cloud has some suffering in it, if there's tension and difficulty, uh, unwholesomeness, harmfulness, unhealthiness, struggle, stress in that cloud, um, then the natural response, uncontrived and just there and present, is a movement. That friendliness turns into a wish, and possibly an action for the alleviation of that suffering. And this is what we know as compassion, this beautiful feeling, something you hear the Dalai Lama say so often. He's the embodiment of compassion, the embodiment of the wish to relieve suffering. So if you have on the flip side a cloud that comes along and there's this sense of brightness or joy, happiness, well-being, wholesomeness, helpfulness in the cloud. There's a natural sense of that from the nature of mind, from this open, balanced, inclusive, friendly meeting of that. And the natural response to that is, woo, a sympathetic joy, or really just a gratitude when there's not a sense of other, there's just gratitude. It's you that's, or a sense of uplift in a way, gratitude. And so these qualities of, and yet in this mix, though we may have a wish to alleviate the suffering, the fact that there's the quality of the balance that's there, there's a recognition that things are as they are. And so there's an interplay between that equanimity, that balance, and compassion that helps steady the compassion so that it doesn't overwhelm us. And it helps steady the joy so it doesn't get too exuberant, it doesn't get too frothy or effervescent. It helps us maintain and sustain that sense of friendliness even in the face of ruggedness. And so we begin to see, oh, wow, the heart's always been there. The heart is a sense, we come to space and we begin exploring this fifth element, and maybe, it starts off feeling a little dry, but then as our exploration continues, as it ripens, oh, it warms up. And there's these heart qualities. So for this month where we'll be exploring the open heart, I hope that these reflections are useful as just a background. And I know I've introduced a lot tonight, so please let, anything that's confusing. Well, we're going to have questions and answers. So you're welcome to ask anything about what I've shared. Um, but you know, don't hold on to anything too tightly. Don't feel like you need to get it or get it right. Um, I hope this has been helpful. Thank you for your attention and showing up. So, with that being said, we've got about 15 minutes here to just invite sharing and or any reflections, any questions, confusions. And I guess you can raise your hand on Zoom or physically or with the hand raising thing. And there's somebody there in the hall to give you the microphone.
Hi, Bruce. This is Jen in the hall with the microphone. I do have a question. Um, can you just say again what your description of love is? I got a little confused.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks for asking that. So, my description of love is really inclusion.
Okay.
Love has the activity to exclude. Fear has the action of excluding. Our knowing, spacious mind includes by default. Sometimes it includes things we wish, weren't there, like physical pain or stress. But it fundamentally includes everything that,
Thank you.
yeah, that passes through it.
Okay. And Marcia has a question, so I'm going to pass the mic here in the hall.
Hey, Bruce.
Hey, Marcia.
Hi. Thank you for the talk tonight. Very interesting and in depth. I have a question about perception and like direct experience happens when we're being mindful and paying attention in that way. But there's this other quality of perception that can really influence our reality and our experience. And I was wondering if you could bring that into your talk in some way that
Yeah.
is inclusive.
Ah, let's love perception. So perception is, in kind of the most formal sense, it's one of the mental factors that's present in every moment of experience, and it's in attendance with that knowing quality of mind. Perception, its most basic level, is really a function of mind that kind of recognizes what's happening. It applies a label to what's happening. It's like, okay, so I'm going to hold this object up, and this is a bell. I recognize this as being a bell. So I perceive that it's a bell. I remember, I have the memory of what it is. I've seen this before or something like it. I can sort of extrapolate, okay, that's a bell. The name bell arises automatically, and then that experience is actually stored automatically and by default in memory. So what perception does is it provides a frame to the experience. And a lot of times the challenge with perception is that we stop at the frame and we don't connect in with the raw ruggedness of you know, the direct moment of experience. So let me give an example at the emotional level. I mentioned the term sadness. So emotions are feelings. We call them feelings because we feel them. They always have an element of sensation associated with them. So I shared in the meditation that for me, could be different for any of you, but for me, when I feel sadness, I feel typically a heaviness in my chest area. It's about grapefruit size, it feels like. It's soft, it's warm, and it's moving downward. And it takes up that space, grapefruit size and a column of flowing down towards my belly that's probably, extending throughout my belly. That's my experience of sadness. There are all of those finer grained elements. If I just stop and I say, oh, I'm sad, I might not be able to connect in with the more fine grained and alive, organic qualities of sadness that might reveal more to me, that might allow the experience to open up and unfold and provide more insight and discovery about that. Also, attendant with the name that's applied and the memory that just arises, there can be a qualitative sense with the name or the memory. And so this can then bring in conjunction with the naming and remembrance, this can bring in the qualities of kind of judging qualities. These are other mental factors. So they might be wholesome mental factors of, oh, that's associated with happy, wholesome, helpful things, or that has, that memory has a pejorative sense, an unhappy or unhelpful, unhealthy sense to it, and that might bring in other mental factors that color and filter in one way or another the experience. So there's the raw knowing of the experience, the raw including of the experience. There's perception, which is recognizing it, naming it, storing it, and then the other things that are associated with that memory and naming of it. Um, and so, and these are happening very, very quickly. So it can be hard, very hard, unless you're very settled and relaxed to tease out these differences, but they are there. So at the end of the day, that sky-like open nature is just clear. It is without, we say that it's without quality, and yet we can have a sense of registering it. And so I use terms like openness or stillness, the lack of sensation, things like that. And these are guiding words simply because the thing I find interesting about space is that we are already in association with it. We live our lives in it. We, we have to be in connection with space to not get run over on a busy street. So it's an avenue of exploration that unfolds. And as our practice deepens, we become clearer and clearer about elements that are in attendance with that ground of receptivity, that ground of knowing. Um, and it, I actually, I'm just going to stop there because I've gone on a long time. Does that help, Marcia?
Yeah, that's good. There's somebody who has their hand up there on the screen, so you can
Okay,
take it over to them. Okay, thank you, Bruce.
thank you.
You can go ahead and
You kind of broke up, but were you calling on us?
Yeah, is this Amira?
This is Paul and Amira. Hi, Bruce.
Hey,
I wanted to thank you for that journey through the Brahma Viharas. I thought that was really elegantly stated, and I had never really heard it put that way, the way you kind of traveled through them one into another. And I wanted to thank you for that and ask, I guess, whether is that your poetry or is that derived from some other text? You know, why have I not sort of heard them moving that way? It's nice.
so the thing I would say, it's interesting. I shared with another Sangha recently, and uh, every Sangha has its own kind of sensibility. Some are very strictly Theravadan, and yet it's interesting to note that there are 52 different schools within the Theravada tradition. That's really the basis of our container at Mountain Stream. That's the foundation. And it's a very powerful one. I mentioned to Marcia the other day, and I felt this way. It's kind of like that's the rice of our offering. That's what allows us to hold a course in a continuum. By the same token, there's really even within Theravadan, you see links to other traditions. So the idea of beginning with equanimity is something that you find in the Tibetan tradition. And so that is something, and I thank you for your question because in a way, I'm coloring outside the box and the lines a little bit there. I will say though that that's kind of the direct, for me, experiential nature of mind because especially when we have the blessing to go on a retreat and get into that container of silence and we don't have a lot of things perturbing us like phone calls and tweets and stuff and having to make meals for ourselves. We can really just turn the attention inwards and cultivate that settling. Sometimes we get so relaxed and peaceful that, as I mentioned, that sense of the body kind of and objects thins and can kind of dissipate and there's a sense of just the spaciousness itself. As we begin to come back into contact with the clouds, as the clouds begin to emerge due to causes and conditions, we see that the thing that's most prevalent as we kind of come back into engagement with our lives is that sense of equanimity, of balance, and openness. And then we can see that emergence into inclusivity and friendliness that responds to the qualities of the clouds. And so there's an experiential aspect of it. So I believe that's found in oftentimes for the purpose of practice, we start in the Theravadan tradition and the Spirit Rock tradition with metta because it's an easier entry place. But if I'm giving a talk on the nature of mind, I'll kind of follow that progression. So it's just to say there's a lot of different ways in which we can hold. And I liked your word poetry because we're applying poetry to a mystery. And I think that's something about poetry that moves us so much is that, my favorite poem ends with nothing, not even the rain, has such small hands. I don't know what that means, but it evokes something and it touches my heart. And in some way, if anything that I share can be likened to poetry, that's helpful to invite and loosen our normal orientation, our familiarity, then you know, that's a big honor. So, is there something I promise to be really short on this next one? I've got time for like a 1 minute.
Great. Yeah, we do have one more question or comment.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Delana. Bruce, that was a brilliant talk and meditation. I wanted to say thank you. This is my first time sitting with you. I wanted to express gratitude for how articulate you are and also how poetic and how much that language speaks to me, the way that you are able to talk about the ineffable and the abstract conceptual, aspects of the Dharma. But then the meditation, I was really drowsy, I'll be honest. I kept falling asleep and like coming back. But the somatic descent, the way that you led us through such deeply subtle states of perception and interoception was brilliant. And what impacted me the most, so this is more of a reflection rather than a question, but what impacted me was really exploring our inner state of like what's inside and then outside. I can't remember exactly what you said, but it was something along those lines. And, feeling what our edges are or the perception of the edge of self. So it was just beautiful to there was like a moment of dissolution and then going into that spatial awareness that you were speaking to, the nature of mind sky, which is actually very much a state of ground in the Vajrayana tradition, talking about the sky. But it was really beautiful to be able to explore edges and also from a nervous system perspective, like our actual spatial awareness, of our body. And like, as you also said, like we experience life and aliveness and embodiment and incarnation through our nervous system. So you just said a lot of things and guided us in a very deep, subtle, somatic way that I that impacted me. So thank you.
Well, I'm so glad it was of use. And yeah, I think you put a lot of things very beautifully. And I also want to say, for those of you, that didn't resonate with that, and I imagine, there's a spectrum of experience and connection to what was shared tonight. Please don't feel like that says anything about you or your practice. Um, and this Dharma is, it's subtle. Our founding teacher of Mountain Stream, John Travis, says that Vipassana means seeing into the subtle. I like to think of it as feeling into the subtle. And so we're all on a journey together. And so I just thank you all from the bottom of my heart for this opportunity to be literally with you as us in this moment of unfolding together that we're making together. So it really touches me, the opportunity. So I'm going to turn it over now to announcements, and then I'll end with a very brief metta. So please.
Bruce, can you do the metta first?
You'd like me to do the metta first? Okay.
Yes.
So just if there's any way in which you can become more comfortable in your posture, this is really where we reap the fruits of our practice for each other, this goodwill for yourself, and whether you know it or not, for each other. You are a gift to yourself. You showed up tonight because you cared about yourself. Maybe you cared about your community too. And being in community is this deep support and collection of energies. So, acknowledging your goodness Is there any sense of, do you feel your goodness in some way? Can you feel maybe an openness or expansiveness or sometimes warmth somewhere, a gentle coolness? Just really allowing the attention to connect with that, allowing that to, if you have connected, suffuse yourself, and reaching out, include all of us and our world with this very simple childlike wish that we might all, that all things, all beings, all aspects of this mystery might be truly happy, and that if we've generated any merit or goodness, that it's freely offered to all that is. Thank you so much for your attention. Breathe deep your goodness. Blessings.